Hi, my name is Nick Huntington-Klein. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to deal with error messages when you get them. In particular, I'm going to be talking about when you're doing coding for data analysis. But really, this is a very general thing. This is almost everything I'm going to say is going to apply if you are certainly coding in doing anything else, even not data analysis. But also, it's going to apply for a lot of technical error messages that might pop up in your life. I get a lot of messages from students, not just my students, but students from across the world who see these videos and then email me with their error messages. And a lot of the time, I think that they just don't know what to do when they are faced with an error message. And it just seems like something that is impossible to deal with yourself. But in fact, most of the time, if you send me a question about an error message and I respond to you with the answer, I didn't know what the answer was. I'd never seen that error message before. I just followed the steps that I'm going to show you in this video and was able to solve it on my own. So what do I do when I see an error message? We're going to go through some steps and let's figure out what we can do. So I've got some code here. I can tell you it's going to create an error message. I've got I'm going to do this in R, by the way, but there's nothing special about R. Everything I'm going to say is going to apply just equally to Python or C or whatever. Okay. So we have some code here. What I'm trying to do with this code, I've got some data that I want to read in. I want to take this first variable, I want to round it just to an integer. And then once I've got that data, I'm going to save it. That's all that I'm doing. However, I can tell you that this code is going to create an error message. Let's see what we do when we get it. So let's run this line of code and see what we get. So run the code and we get an error. So we see this error, we see that we have an error, but the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to read the error message and see what it says. It sounds pretty straightforward, but a lot of people don't even get that far. So let's see what we can do. So error in read.csv, and then it's showing me all the code that is there in the line that is causing the error. We can get down to the very bottom there, and it'll actually tell me what the error message is. Could not find function, the pipe. Which is an R function, the pipe, but that's what it's saying. It can't find that function. So based on that error message, I can think, okay, what is it telling me that the problem is? Okay, this is telling me that it wants to find this function. It cannot find this function. So I need to help it find that function. That is the way in which I'm going to, fix the problem. And I can tell you that the problem is that I've not loaded the package that function is in. So let's go ahead and fix our problem. I'm going to go library, magritar, because that is the package that the pipe is in, and we will rerun our code. Okay, now we come to our second error message. Let's see what this error message says. We're going to use that same skill again, just reading the message. Error in mutate, could not find function mutate. Okay, great. So we have another function we can't find. That's the same problem. We can solve it in the same way by just loading up the package. Okay, great. We fixed that. Let's read it again. Okay, now we have another error message. So I'm going to read the error message. First, problem with mutate, input X, object X not found. I mean, X is right there. I don't know what you're talking about. Input X is round X. Okay. So we've read the error message. It's telling us that it can't find X, but that's weird because X should be right there. So we're going to go to step number 2, which is check the syntax. We're going to make sure that we are actually using the function properly. When you see an error message, there's only a few things that could be going on. 1, the command or function that you're using is broken in some way. 2, you're using it wrong. Or 3, the arguments that you're sending to it are not what you think that they are. Those are really the only 3 things that could happen that would give you an error message outside of weird stuff like, your computer ran out of memory or something like that. So it's going to be one of these 3 things. So I'm going to check the syntax of mutate to make sure that I'm using it properly. So we're going to check the documentation, see what the syntax is. I'm going to go help mutate and see what my syntax is. Okay, so the syntax is it needs a data argument, which I am passing in with the pipe here. If you're not an R person or if you're using a language that doesn't use a pipe, all this does is whatever's on the top, make it the first argument. So that's what we're filling in here. And then ... which in our language means put whatever you want. So that's clearly not the problem. It's not the problem that I am feeding it incorrect syntax. At least I don't think so. We can go down and figure out, well, what syntax does it really want? Name value pairs. The name gives the name of the column in this output. And then the value, which can be a vector of length 1, vector of the same length as current group, null, data frame or tibble. So what do we have here? We have the name, the name, great. And then the value pair, which is a rounded version of x, which is a vector of the same length. So that should be fine. We've checked the syntax. It looks like the syntax checks out. Great. Okay, so we read the error message. That didn't get us there. We looked at the syntax. That didn't figure out what the problem was either. We're going to move to step number 3. Now, this step could really go anywhere in this list. I'm going to go ahead and put it here. Once you get more used to programming and more used to the language that you're working in, it will probably move later and later in the list until it becomes the last ditch effort that you have. Step number 3 is to Google the error message or use some sort of search engine. So let's see, problem with mutate input X. I'm just going to take all of this and I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to put it into a search engine and just see what pops up. Okay, so problem with mutate input model X. That looks like exactly the error that we have here. Okay, so let's see here. Currently, progressing the data. Not sure what the issue is. So we can start reading these through these things. Maybe this person will have the same answer. Maybe they won't. I'm not going to actually check and see if this solves it, but this is something that you could do, right? Google the error message. When you are Googling error messages, things to think about. First of all, the X that's in the error message came from the name that I gave it, the name X, right? Somebody else who had the same problem probably might not have called their objects the same thing. So I might want to do different parts of it. Right? I might just want to do the part that is going to be the same for everybody. So I might just do error with mutate input, and then the not found part, and then maybe somebody has the same problem, but has different names. So I might try that as well. I might start going through these and seeing if anybody has the same thing, and maybe somebody has solved the problem before. Okay, so wherever that one goes in your list, and for me, that actually is more towards the end, but if you're starting out, it's going to be more towards the start, is Googling the error message. Number 4, we're going to check the components to isolate the problem. Okay, so in any sort of line of code, there are a couple of things that go into it. There's the function that you're calling, there's the arguments that go into your function, and if something is not working, then we need to make sure that, well, what part of it isn't working? We're going to try to break out the different parts of this function to see if something is wrong. So what are the components of this command? So we have our data here. Let's go ahead and separate this out. We're going to chunk this out, separate it as much as possible so we can look at the individual components themselves. So instead of using the pipe here, I'm going to get rid of the pipe, and I'm going to say I'm just going to create this data set bat there. Okay, so first of all, that's the data set that I'm passing to mutate. Let's just see if that data set works. What if I just look at the data set? Okay, great. We're looking at the data set. That's great. You might have already spotted the error, but we're going to come back in a second. So next, we're going to check the mutate part of it. So what if we do mutate with our data set, but maybe the x equals round x? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm using round improperly or something like that. So I'm going to try it with something else. I'm going to say x equals 2. And then just see what that does. Okay, that seems to work fine. It didn't have a problem with that. So that was not an issue. Okay, so maybe so it's not the data set itself, right? So far, at least the data set will work by itself. It doesn't give me an error when I just look at the data set. It is not the mutate of the data set and x equals something. That's not a problem. The only component that's really left here is the round of x. Maybe round doesn't work. Let me try a different function of x. Okay, so let's try that. Let's do mutate bat x equals, let's say x squared, a different function. So now we get a different, this time it says object bar not found. That time is a problem because I had a syntax error, right? A typo. Typos are often the problem. Now we get the same error again. So we have located where the error is. It is in that part there where it's calling x, right? It's not a problem when I do x equals 2. It's a problem when I say x is equal to some function of x. The problem is in when I'm calling x, and I know that it is because I've tried all the different components and I've found just the part that I need to focus on to get an error, right? I'm trying to recreate the error here. If you ever post on a place like Stack Exchange and they say, give us the code, a minimal reproducible example to let us recreate your error, this is what they're trying to do because they're following the same sort of steps. They want to see what causes the error so that they can see how they can fix that piece of it so as to make it work again, okay? So we figured out that it's a problem when we are looking for x. We think, well, that's weird. What's going on? Something must be wrong here. We realize that now we know that the problem is that x can't be found. Now this might lead us back to our original problem, which is that bat doesn't have a variable x in it. right? If I know that mutate is looking for a variable x in the bat data set, well, now I know where to look, and I can see, oh yeah, I made a mistake. I didn't tell it about the column header, so now I can put x and y as the column headers in read.csv, and I know that that's how I fix it because I know how read.csv works. But in general, I have located the problem. Whatever your particular command is that you're working with, you're now going to know what part of it you need to fix, or at least you're going to have a much narrower idea of where you need to look to fix it. So we're going to recreate bat, and now we're going to try our mutate round. Great, now it works properly, right? Now we have a rounded data set exactly as we want. We read the message, we checked the syntax to see if that was wrong, we Googled the error message, we checked the components of the line one at a time, trying to change things to isolate just individual components of the line to see which parts of it give us an error. And then once we figure out just which parts of it give it the error, we can look a bit deeper. Okay, those are the steps that we follow. So we can take this data set and we can chain it back all together with the pipe. There we go. Okay, and then we can save it as we like. And there's another error. So let's walk through our steps one last time just to see what is going on. Step number one, we're going to read the error message and look for words that we recognize. Okay, so error in save, that's the line that we just ran. Objects batistine.data not found. Okay, so it can't find batistine, it can't find batistine.rdata. Well, that's because I named it bat instead of batistine, so that can fix that right there. Okay, great, let's do that. Okay, it still can't find batistine.rdata, and I'm thinking, well, that's weird because I'm not trying to give it an object, I'm just trying to save it to that file. So step number two, I'm going to check the syntax. So I'm going to do help save. Show me the syntax for save. Okay, so save ... give me all the objects to save. And then, okay, maybe I'm not sure, maybe there's an example code down here that can help us figure it out. Okay, so here I'm saving two objects and then file equals the .rdata that I want to save it as. So I need to put in file equals. Great. Okay, that is it. Those are the steps that I follow, at least when I see an error message that I need to fix. They don't have anything to do with what language you're in. These tips will apply in any language. They don't necessarily even rely on you recognizing the error message itself. It will certainly help if you recognize certain terms in the error message, but you don't have to recognize the error message itself. And you might not even need the message. You might just need to see the word error, and you can use these steps to try to isolate what the problem is and fix it. All right, that's it. Thank you.